Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Get French Football News Preview Show. I'm your host, Eric Devin, and joining me are Adam White and Nathan Staples. With Ligue engaging in midweek fixtures yesterday and Tuesday, we'll start the show off with a brief recap of the Matchday 6 scores. Toulouse continued their impressive start to the season, winning at Lille 2-1 behind a brace from Ola Toivonen, while Paris Saint-Germain turned back Dijon 3-0, with Edinson Cavani netting a penalty to move up to joint top in the league scoring charts. Yesterday, Lyon won in the league for the first time in more than a month, thumping 10-man Montpellier 5-1 behind doubles from the returning Nabil Fekir and Corentin Tolisso. Elsewhere in the multiplex, feisty Angers won their third straight match 2-1 at home to Caen, while Guingamp held off Lorient 1-0. Nancy and Bastia played to a scoreless draw in Corsica, while Saint-Etienne did the same at Nantes, despite a red card for Kevin Malcuit and 3 players being forced off through injury. The big result of the multiplex over was Monaco's loss at Nice 4-0. Mario Balotelli bagged a brace, and Tule Bakayoko was sent off. But the host's young goalkeeper, Johan Cardinal, might have been the real man of the match, contributing several superb saves. The late match also wasn't without its drama, as Marseille took the lead at Rennes through a brace from Bafétimbi Gomis, before Adrien Hunou scored a late winner in a 3-2 victory for the hosts. So we're going to start off with a slightly different format this week. What we'll do is we're going to preview 4 matches, as we always do, but along with those previews, we'll also do a recap of one of those teams' previous matches. So we're going to start off with PSG versus Dijon. PSG won 3-0 versus Dijon on Tuesday. But it was a match in which they only scored 1 goal from open play, a superb header from Lucas from Maxwell cross. So, Adam, I guess I'll come on to you first. A great result on paper, but is the fact that the PSG are still seeming a little bit less clinical than they should be worrying?
I think Emery will be pleased. I think that the progression from the first few weeks of the season to now is still obvious. So they may not be the finished article in terms of what he wants them to be like just yet. But I think he'll be pleased with the difference from considering the Caen performance and the Dijon performance. It was very routine in the Dijon game. So over the course of the week, I think 9 goals, 9 conceded, 2 wins. All right, 2 games they should be winning, but games that Emery will be thinking that there's a definite step up after the previous 2 games when they were poor against Saint Etienne and didn't deserve to win the games. Yes, and I thought they did enough for a draw. And the previous game against Monaco, where they were outplayed, Monaco pressed them really well and got at them. So although to the standard of opposition is definitely a step down from what it was previously, I think he'll be happy with these 2 performances. It's just the clinical side of Paris Saint-Germain is almost entirely reliant on Cavani. It depends how he's playing as to how clinical they're going to be and how effective they're going to be in front of goal. Because as we've detailed before, and as I've mentioned before in our roundup packs, that I think that the squad's a little bit unbalanced and there's a bit of play. There's a little bit of lack of sort of support for Cavani. There's no real reserve striker. So the onus is on him to score the goals. If he doesn't score the goals, he's not on form. Then they don't look like a much worse team because they create the chances. But with Cavani playing like he had been, then that really affected the outcomes of the games and how they looked as a side. But overall, I think Emery would be happy with the difference, given his 4 goals in the first half against Caen last week, and the routine win over Dijon looked like old PSG looked like they did last season, and again completely omnipotent and just they were going to win whatever happened. So I think it's an improvement. So he'll take that.
All right, so Nathan, we'll come on to you now. We see that Ben Arfa Hatem Ben Arfa has once again been excluded from the squad for tomorrow. So 2 questions, I guess, to ask to you about players who are absent. One, I'd like to address Ben Arfa and what this means for the team and the transfer policy. But also, I want to talk about Marco Verratti, who is once again injured with a calf injury. Talking about Verratti first, and we'll move on to Ben Arfa. Should PSG? I know that Verratti is one of, if not their best players in some regards, but should PSG start perhaps looking at him as more of a luxury rather than a player that they can expect to see in the side week in and week out? I mean, this is the better part of a year now that Verratti's been inconsistently available, and a team of PSG's stature, I think, need to be game planning with a little bit more certainty. So what would you say to the situation regarding Verratti?
Yes, I think that's an excellent point that a team can't rely on someone who can be so important. Yes, he's a terrific player, but if you're constantly missing games and not interjecting the flow, thinking the player that comes to mind straight away, someone like Jack Wilshere at Arsenal, who's had to go on loan to Bournemouth because injury problems have really stalled a couple of years of his career. While it's not been so dramatically bad for Verratti, or it has been inconsistent for the last year. The problem is at the same time, he's such a talented footballer, on the level of potentially world class on his day, especially, that it's so difficult not to try and give him a couple more goes and still game plan with him, hopefully him in the side, because he's that good and he can change games on his own sometimes. Because he, especially like a games against Arsenal and the games against Saint Etienne, if his teammates were playing better, they would have swept them aside because he was really dictating the play. But yeah, you start to think of whether, especially now, this is another injury. He started the season with a little bit of a knock, and he's picked up another one. But those sort of, not only those issues lay on the player, that's also an issue for Paris Saint-Germain and their medical team. Are they treating him right? Are they making sure that he's fully fit before he's returning? Is his training specified to a certain way to make sure that he's not picking up these little niggling injuries, especially if they're muscle related? That's something they need to look at as well from a sports science point of view, whether they're preparing him right if they're consistent injuries throughout a season like that. So that has to be looked at as well as worrying about Verratti being out for a long period of time and having to game plan without him. As for Ben Arthur, it's such a shame to see someone who was so wonderful last season sort of be... It seems like he's been ostracised and early at that. They couldn't really find a place for him in the squad, and I'm not entirely surprised. It seemed like it was a good transfer at the time because of his quality, but he's not really a wide player. He's probably preferably playing that centre attacking mid role, but we've discovered Pastore is so good in that role that why would you pass up on someone like that? I'd like to see him try him there because he was so successful last season and he scored goals and created a few goals from that area. So if you've got a player like that, it's worth trying. But it just seems like it might have been a bad decision on Paris Saint-Germain's part, but also probably a bad decision on Ben Arthur's part. We knew this summer would be big for him, deciding where his next venture would be if it was going to be away from Nice. And I have a feeling he's probably picked too much of an ambitious option. He thought that the level brought himself, which rightfully so, he can be an exceptional player in his day. He might have just gone a step too far too soon. And it's a shame that I'm coming back into the team on a regular basis unless he does something dramatically now, which is a real shame because we love seeing someone like of his talents in Ligue 1, but I don't know if Emery's going to play him, and if he does, where he will fit in properly, unless there's some sort of injury crisis in those wide positions, because they have so many options. It's going to be difficult for him now, yeah.
Adam, move on to you now. Toulouse recorded a fairly, perhaps a fortunate win against Lille on Tuesday, but they did so without Martin Braithwaite, who's been a little bit of their talisman this season. Is this sort of win, the type of win that can be a confidence booster and really move Toulouse up a level? Or should it be taken with a grain of salt, given that it was against the Lille side who are really struggling?
I can see both points of view. I think Martin Braithwaite, since perhaps even in the sense of the end of last season, like when Wassim Ben Yedder was so important for them and he was like scored 14, 15 league goals in the end, and that brilliant run of form when Pascal Press took over and kept them up. Braithwaite also really stepped up, perhaps not as obviously, but given the form that Wassim Ben Yedder is in. But Braithwaite was fantastic then, and given that Wassim Ben Yedder's gone and they haven't really replaced him, I guess Ola Toivonen kind of fills that hole, but I don't know if he's anywhere near in the class of Ben Yedder. Braithwaite's really stepped up. So given they've started this season really well and ended last season fantastically, and Braithwaite's been key to that to win. Although, as you said, Lille have been pretty terrible recently, but to win without Braithwaite away from home at a side that still finished fifth last year, they're still a very good team, still got good players. To win without Braithwaite be a massive confidence boost for them, and it really shows the job that Pascal Dupraz has done. I wasn't a fan of his when he was at Evian. He was too unpredictable, but since he's taken over Toulouse, he's been absolutely brilliant. And winning out shows the effect he's had on this squad, not just the individual players, but the squad as they're so together, they're so focused. And players like Diop and Julian at the back have been brilliant. Dermas has come in and done well. It'll be a huge confidence boost for them. I think in terms of the fact that they were helped a little bit by Lille's poor performance, and Lille's poor form won't necessarily worry them too much. I think they're a team that it looks like they're not going to be in relegation trouble this season. They're a team that looks like they can cause, on their day, if they're going to keep playing like this, can cause anyone problems in the league. They're going to give them a game, and they're on a bit of a roller coaster ride. I think they're just going to see where it goes. So I'm very much looking forward to the game with PSG tomorrow. I think it's going to be really exciting, especially as it's at the Stade Municipal in Toulouse. It could be a great game, and Toulouse, although it's PSG, will fancy themselves. That win in Lille was a massive confidence boost, and the squad will be very, very positive looking ahead to the rest of the season. No more, at least hopefully, I've become a bit of a fan of theirs, having watched them for the last 2 years. But I feel like they're sort of on the up, and this season could be a big one for them.
Yeah, I would personally have to wholeheartedly agree. So with that in mind, let's get our predictions. We've got PSG visiting Toulouse. Adam?
I'm going 2-2.
All right. High drama. Nathan?
Yeah.
I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
I'm going to go for a 2-1 PSG win. And I have to wholeheartedly concur. I think that Toulouse, especially those big physical defenders, really do have the ability to trouble anybody in the league. But I think that with the form that particularly Lucas Moura is on right now, that PSG look a little bit too strong and are going to be too desperate to get a win to put the pressure on the likes of Monaco and Nice ahead of the weekend's matches. So with that done, we're going to come now on to Nantes versus Saint-Etienne and combine this a little bit with a Saint-Etienne versus Lille preview. So starting with you, Nathan, we see in this match Saint-Etienne started out with 3 players getting sent off or taken off because of injury, another player getting dismissed. So they're playing essentially 70 minutes of football with Brian Dabo at center back, Kevin Montepaquet at right back, and 10 men. They get a scoreless draw. Fantastic result. Great situation to get a point in. But I want to address this question to you about Nantes, a team now that is really, really struggling to score, even with having brought in this new striker, Stupinski, and there's been some, suggestion that he could make a difference. But they've now scored 2 goals in the league. They've and one of those was in their first week against Dijon. Do they have to be looking at relegation as a genuine concern now?
With that goal scoring form, yes. We know Saint-Etienne are a very defensive minded team, but Toulouse, it was an insane 20 minutes, wasn't it? Florentine Pogba, Loic Perrin and Fabien Lemoine had to come off injured, and Malcuit, one of the replacements, 6 minutes later, in between that mess, got himself sent off, and it was a little unfair. I thought that they mentioned it on the highlights that they're trying to get rid of that sort of double punishment rule of a last man penalty, and that the referee seemed to have forgotten that. It seemed in the heat of the moment, and that did change things because it put the impetus on Nantes. And you mentioned there 2 goals all season, one in the first game of the season. I think one was last week as well, and they were tepid, unimaginative. Emiliano Sala, it just looked like he was, I don't know. I can't work out it was a crapshoot for him. It was almost like every time he touched the ball, he was looking at the ball and just hitting it as hard as he could, hoping that and praying that something would happen, like the ball would magically float past Stéphane Ruffier, who's a top quality goalkeeper. Let's not take anything away from him. He did make some really good saves in this game as well. But they were so inept, and they were so lethargic in their build-up play, and it was so slow at times. It was just too easy, and they could have played until their game on Saturday and still not scored. From the looks of things, really, they were. So it was. We worried about René Girard when he came in, that they might not be attacking enough, even though they brought in some interesting attacking players in those wide areas. But they don't have a goal scorer. Stepinski scored, I think he scored last week, didn't he? I think he scored the winner. But
yeah, he did. Yeah,
yeah,
he missed that. Remember that chance he put over the bar? He missed a very, very easy chance too. So it's an up and down debut.
Yes, it was. It sums up every striker that none have ever brought in for the last year. Yassine Bamu has about being there, but he's. I've never really thought he was good enough, and he's still not good enough. Salah had that great moment at Caen when he was still at Bordeaux on loan there, but since then he's barely done anything. They're just so far off where they need to be. And you're right, this is such a competitive bottom end of Ligue at the moment that they really have to start looking over their shoulders. And you have to be beating a team that loses its two best centre backs and is down to 10 men. There's no excuses for not beating them. No excuse at all. And like you mentioned, the players that they had to play in, Kevin Monipaque was a wing back for 70 minutes, which is ridiculous. And it's one of the crazy. I know it's out of desperation, but you have to be able to beat him at right back. Surely, they should be really worried now, really worried, and it's not going to. They've got Marseille away next week. The weekend, and then it's Bastia at home. They need to pick up points, and they need to pick up them now because everyone around them is at the same time. So they need to do something about it. Yeah.
Adam, I'll come on to you. Continuing on that, what exactly is Girard getting wrong? He's brought in these players, the likes of Thompson, and he's got Rongier back to full fitness. Amin Harit's been promoted from the youth team. Is it the wrong system, the wrong personnel? I mean, can you identify anything specific that he's doing wrong in terms of failing to create a fluid attack? Or is it just down to the strikers?
It's very difficult to pinpoint. I think there is a lot. I think Nathan's right. There's a lot to do with the strikers. As he said, Bamu and Salah aren't really good enough. And Stepinski is young. He's still 21. You know, he's got a lot of potential. He's great in the Polish league, but it's a big step up to come to Ligue 1 and score goals in a very difficult, a league that's notoriously difficult to score goals in. So that's definitely part of it. But I think the problem for a long time has also been creativity. Like, they are not sure in terms of chances created that they've got the players, or at least a variation in the sort of number of players that are going to create chances. I don't know that they've got, we talk about goals coming from different areas of the pitch. I'm not sure they've got chances coming from different areas of the pitch, if you like. I don't look at that midfield and go, yeah, there's loads of chances in there. They've got a lot of sort of nippy technical players. I'm a big fan of Adrian Thomason, but I don't know that he's the man to pick a through ball or to create, assist or chance after chance. Guillaume Gillet's a very good player in midfield. Brilliant when he came in last January. But again, he's a defensive midfielder. He's not the type of player to be nipping past a fullback or a centre-back and playing someone in. So Harit is the only one possibly. And I was a big fan of Adrian last season, the Brazilian, although he was in and out the side and also very, very inconsistent. But I felt like he had something about him. I was surprised they let him go. So I just think that although they've got the terrible combination of they can't create chances, and when they do create chances, they don't score them. So in a combination like that, you're going to be looking over your shoulders at the bottom three. So perhaps they could have done that. They could have during the winter. They perhaps could have not just strengthened in forward areas and attack, but possibly an attacking midfield and wider roles as well. They're just a bit one-dimensional, I think. And Girard is under pressure. I mean, Vladimir Keita is can be a very, very volatile president. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they get a couple of losses in the next couple of games. He's gone, Girard. So it's tough times for them, I'm afraid. But they've partly only really got themselves to blame. I'm not sure their recruitment was wholly adequate this summer. Harit obviously came through the youth system and he's looked good. But apart from that, I don't know where they're creating chances, and I think they can finish them off when they get them. So tough times.
All right, turning now on to Saint-Etienne. Injuries are really starting to become an issue for this team. Henri Saivet has also been ruled out for 5 to 6 weeks, in addition to the 3 that came off at the weekend. Are Saint-Etienne going to struggle this season as a result of injuries? Coming on to you, Nathan, or should they not prioritize the Europa League as much as some maybe had expected them to?
Probably not now. Like you say, with that amount of injuries, the Europa League should really become. While it's a shame to say it because of the coefficient and you want them to do reasonably well in it, with that amount of injuries, you're worrying about where they might finish in the league. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do change something. And if it becomes a consistent problem, then it might be a problem in both areas because they might have to play players in both games. But for the immediate future, it's not a worry against Lille. I wouldn't. They can have half that team out against Lille. I mean, the defending for both to lose goals on Wednesday were comical. They might as well have played the Benny Hill theme for the defense running backwards. All that Toivonen's running at them at the speed of a 5-year-old. I don't know. It was embarrassing to watch someone as lethargic as Toivonen, although I do quite like him, just obliterate a Lille defensive line that were so frightened of him. It was comical. So as long as de Saint-Etienne have 11 fit players, that's correct, isn't it? Yeah.
It should be.
I think they'll cause problems, I think, at the moment because... At least they've got a game against Lille this weekend. That's probably the only positive they can take out of this mini injury crisis. So, yeah, they need to be concerned about it for the foreseeable length of time that like Saive's out for a while. If there's injuries to Pogba and Perrin are long term, that's a big issue because they're both very crucial to the solidity of that team and they're really good centre backs. But at least they've got Lille. That's all they can hope for.
Yeah, so do we want to say anything else on Lille? I mean, are they? Can we at least maybe shed a little positivity on the debutant, the young Malian, Basuma? Do we like what we saw of him?
I did. I thought he had a very good debut, and he showed some nice touches. I think they're in a very similar position to Nantes in that they're lacking. They're a bit one-dimensional as well. Ancelotti came out in the week and said that he rushed Ed Air back from the Euros. He wanted to give him more time and he didn't, and now regrets that because he thinks he looks unfit and he looks tired. And I think he might have been the whole team that he rushed back if that's the case because they all look very similar. I think their midfield is very similar to Saint Etienne's, and which I've often mentioned that I'm not a huge fan of, or Nantes, and they just look so one-dimensional. I mean, Amadou looks good, but again, it's a defensive midfielder, and players like Abadi, Sankari, Mavuba aren't going to create chances. So hopefully, with Basuma, maybe there might be an option there for. He's still 20, and he's had one game. It might be he looked a little bit more creative and a little bit more like he had a bit of a spark about him. So I think they're going to struggle too. Without Boufal, they're a very different side. So I think they need changes too, and they need some impetus from somewhere, and I don't know where that's coming from. So hopefully Ronnie Lopez can, because I was a big fan of him on his first loan spell and last season. Yeah, at the end of last season when Boufal was injured, the last few games he was great, but we haven't seen it yet this season. So maybe he's their hope, but them and Nantes could be quite far down the league this season.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing to see two teams of their stature struggling so much on the pitch. So before we conclude now with score predictions for Saint-Etienne hosting Lille, Nathan?
2-0 Saint-Etienne, and Antonetti to lose his job afterwards.
Oh. All right, Nate, that's the bonus £5. Adam, for you?
1-0 Saint-Etienne.
Okay. And I'm going to go even more dour, a scoreless draw. I think Saint-Etienne... I think Galtier wants to make a difference in the Europa League this year. I think given that the group that they have, there's no clear favorites. And I think that he's going to play a rotated side for this match and give more of an emphasis to the Europa League match in midweek. So scoreless draw for me. Moving on now, we're going to talk a little bit about Lyon's victory over Montpellier and sort of bookend that with a preview of Montpellier versus Metz, who Nathan and I talked about a little bit on Monday, but I wanted to bring Adam in on this as well, as he's seen them recently. So first of all, we'll start with Lyon, though. An impressive scoreline, somewhat of a caveat in that Montpellier's young left back gets sent off very, very early on, and it ends up being a 5-1 win for the hosts, and a double for Tolisso, double for Fekir. So Adam, we'll start with you. Mamana did pretty well in this debut. Yanga and Biwa will be suspended for the next league match with an accumulation of bookings. Is this a chance for the Argentine to get a run of games for Bruno Genesio's side? And along with that, who would you start against Sevilla at this point?
Oh, wow. I think so. I think that he's looks like a capable defender. He had a decent game yesterday, although obviously didn't have too much to do, given that the sending off really gave Lyon, perhaps as it should have in Nantes, like the impetus, and they went on and deservedly won comfortably. But I think he's still young. He's 20, come from River Plate, and I think he's definitely looks like he has potential. He's definitely like good on the ball, and he reads the game well. But it's to say that he would step up and after one game, he's only really played in one friendly so far. That's his first start. If Yanga and Bima were available, I think he would start against Sevilla because he's far more experienced, far more sort of capable defender in those situations. He knows that sort of European style. He knows what to expect from those sort of defenses and those sort of attacks in Europe. So it's a huge game against Sevilla, and I don't know that a 20-year-old after one game in Ligue and after a decent career at River Plate in Argentina for the few couple of years that he had in the side, whether he would be able to come in and replace Yanga and Bia. I still think there's quite a big gap between them. So I don't know if he's ready yet, but perhaps as they go over the course of the season, that he'll be phased in and they'll use him a little bit more, because it would be great to have an option, because as we said, he's a talented player. So hopefully Yanga and Bia would be starting that game with us. At least Genesio would hope so. So he's a very good player, possibly, but he needs time to be eased in. I hate to see them throw him in and it affect his confidence should he have a bad game. So hopefully Yang Wemby would be the first choice for the Sevilla game. But in Liga, and definitely, hopefully he'll get games for those times when they've got a European game in the week, or they've just had a European game, and he'll get a little bit more experience there, and they'll ease him in, and hopefully he'll be an asset for them later in the year.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree along those lines. A good debut, but let's slow the hype train down. Nathan, coming to you, can this 3-5-2 actually work long term? I feel like the center backs are displaying a little bit better. I think it's getting the best out of the attacking impetuses of Ribas and Rafael without forcing them to do defensive duties that they're perhaps not as adept at. But that being said, the worry is once Lacazette, Fekir are all back to full fitness, how would you fit this team together? So maybe talk a little bit about the formation and is it sustainable? And if so, what would be Lyon's best 11 using it?
I quite like the formation. It's a little bit different from them recently, and it worked in the Champions League. It wasn't 100% successful against Marseille, but it's a bit of a false statement to say it worked again against Montpellier, because they were down to 10 men for long periods. But I think it suits a lot of the players, like you say, the wing backs especially Rafael, who just because of injuries doesn't seem to have at least seems to have lost about a yard of pace to get back and forth, and that energy he used to have at Manchester United. So to have him a little bit further forward and not worrying too much about getting back, essentially tell him to play how he usually plays, is a little bit better. But then you've got the extra cover of the extra centre-back. And obviously it's Toussaint at the moment, but Gonalon, when not suspended, him in that area as well, covering up, helps. I really like the 3-5-2. When Lacazette comes back, Cornier, even though he's played so well, it's a tough one. But those are the kind of options you like. I like the midfield three of Tolisso, either Ferry or Sergi Darder, and then either Gonalon or Toussaint, depending on Gonalon's fitness or suspension. Just because it probably gives, with that three at the back and Gonalon, and the wing backs not fully full all the time, it probably gives Darder a little bit more freedom to maybe shrink some of his defensive duties. If you want to be a bit more solid, you could use Ferry, who is better at tracking back. But yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Is the Cornet question, is keeping him in the side, and I think he's a good option to have if Lacazette is fit, because I think you can't deny that Lacazette and Fekir are better. but I think that's probably the best way forward for them at the moment, the 3-5-2. Yeah, I think it works a little bit better with the players they want to use. It gives some of their players that are restricted in the more rigid formations a bit more freedom. And when Lacazette comes back and allowed to play Fekir up front with him in a slightly more similar ideal than the 4-1-2-1-2, although you could possibly put in the side. There's the option there to sort of switch it up a little bit. So yeah, I like this formation. I think it gives them more security, especially with the centre backs not really impressing in the last couple of weeks.
All right, Adam, do you have anything to add to our discussion of Lyon's tactical future? I would argue too that maybe part of the success of playing with a 3-4 or 3-5-2 or 3-4-1-2 or whatever it is, a lot of that is down to the movement of Cornet, which we don't see from Fekir and Lacazette. So I think there is a little bit still to be worked out around this, but it could still be productive.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with Nathan as well. I think it suits the players. It suits their side really well, and the makeup of their squad. Perhaps most importantly, may end up suiting Nabil Fekir as well. I think he was at his best the season before last when they played with a diamond and he played in behind it must have been Clinton and G and Lacazette, and he may end up being able to play as that one in behind the two when everybody's fit. So perhaps that would be the one, maybe in the long term, the biggest beneficiary of that system. So yeah, I like to see them playing it, see them keep playing it as well, because it gets the best out of their players, and it's relatively unusual in Ligue as well. Like there's the diamond or the 4-3-3 is pretty, or 4-2-3-1 or 4-5-1 is sort of very very standard, but it could see some variation, and I think it could suit them both at home and in Europe. So I like it as well.
Continuing on tactics now, Nathan, we'll come on to you. Montpellier set up using a 4-2-3-1, which you haven't really seen from them. Morgan Sanson was used on the left. Again, this is prior to the dismissal of the left back. But could that be a possibility going forward, as they did score, after all, from it?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to judge in this kind of game. Like I say, Poti was sent off 8 minutes in. The goal comes from a pretty bad mistake again from Nkulu that allows Sanson the chance to break forward. But I would quite like to see it attempted again, because it does give them a couple more options. And I know playing Sanson wide is something that you're not the biggest fan of, Eric, and I prefer him in a more central role as a centre midfielder. But I don't know. It's difficult to really judge in all honesty from that limited time of doing it. But I like Montpellier. I think they need to create a little bit more if they want to be successful, because they haven't had the best of starts from the 5 goals on Wednesday wouldn't have helped their goal difference. But they have a solid back line usually if one doesn't get sent off, and they probably need a little bit more. Like you say, they want to try and lift some of the burden off Riyad Boudebouz, who's such a terrific player. And yeah, I would like them to try it again, because, like I say, if they play that 4-2-3-1, it gives them the option to play Boudebouz in that centre attack midfield role and allow him to express himself where he needs to be, and then put all those more other exciting players at the club around him, like Sanson, who's a good player, and play Kamara around him if you can as well, and then just hope that they can get the goals up front. But they still need it. They still need to just settle on a striker for me, of whether it's going to be Casimir Ningra or Steve Mooney. I know they've both had spells of doing reasonably well, but that's still the problem area rather than their makeup of their midfield, which is more of what the formation would be about. But yeah, it's a tough one on such short evidence, but I'm pretty sure they'll give it a go again. And like I say, it does give more options to Boudebouz around him than it did before.
All right, turning now to their opponents this weekend, Metz. Adam, Nathan, and I had talked a little bit about this team on Monday, and I wondered, having seen them as well, what your views were. What are the ingredients of their early success, and are they free of relegation worry, or is it really too early to tell given their opponents?
Partially, it is too early to tell. I mean, 5-6 games in, there's a long way to go. But I've been really impressed with them. I think they're the best equipped side of the 3 promote teams to stay up. I think that they're not necessarily free of relegation worries, but they'll be the most confident of getting to sort of Christmas time and being less burdened by looking over their shoulder at the bottom 3 or the bottom 2. So I think that they look like a very sort of adaptable side and one that will work in Ligue. And I think their early success has been largely down to their forward line. Mevla Erdink has come in and he's got 5 goals already. He got that brilliant hat-trick against Nantes and has looked, although he wasn't great against Bordeaux by any means, but has looked lively overall. So they've got someone who has Ligue experience and has European experience, and for a side like Metz is a very important player. So he's going to get them, if he plays every game, he'll get well into double figures by the end of the season. Looking at 15, maybe even more goals for him this season if he keeps going. So that's a huge asset. But wide, they've been fantastic. I'm hugely impressed with Ismail Assar. He's very raw and very young. He's only 18, but he's come off the bench early in the season and started the last 3 games, and he's been really exciting and really a breath of fresh air for Ligue, and especially in the games they've been playing. He's been really stood out, and he's so quick and direct and so much skill. Like he just one of those players that creates things, and I'm impressed with him and Ghetto when he's been fit. He's missed the last couple of games for injury, but he was very impressive too. And Jan Diouf, who I'm a massive fan of. So they've got so many options in those forward areas that they're going to worry any pair of fullbacks or any centre backs. So I think that they're looking at a mid-table finish as it stands. I think we talked about a number of sides who have started and look much worse than they do, both on paper and in game situations. So I think they look decent. Their defense has been good as well. I like Frank Signorino. He's old, but he's an experienced campaigner. They've done well to sign some experienced campaigners in him. And Renaud Coad, who's a very combative midfielder who I quite liked to select in last season when he came back from his injury. He'll be an asset to them and the rest of their midfield to sort of help them ease into that league and sort of style. It's very different. It's a big step up from Ligue 2 in certain regards. So they need that experience in him and Bisevic. Is that saying? Bisevic, thank you.
Yeah, he was on the bench.
Yeah, so they've got those sort of players. So I would be positive if I was Hinchberger. I think they look like there's a good eight sides perhaps that haven't started as well as them and look like they will be better than. So I like them. They're fun so far this season. So let's hope it keeps going.
All right. So Adam, I'll come on to you then for your score prediction for their trip to Montpellier.
Oh, I'm going to go 1-1.
All right. Nathan?
I'm going to go for 1-0 Mets.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to go with a 2-1 Montpellier win. So we're going to come on now to our final match of our final match to recap, and that's the big South Coast derby. No, it's not Portsmouth versus Southampton. It's Nice versus Monaco. An unbelievable 4-0 win for the hosts at the Allianz Riviera. So, Nathan, coming on to you, unbelievable result. I think we have to admit, first of all, that it's probably not a true reflection of the game. Johan Cardinal had an incredible match. But is this sustainable for Nice, who now top the table?
It's difficult to say. To start off, yes, it's a fantastic result. I thought, in all honesty, although Johan Cardinal was excellent as well, and he kept Monaco at play, although they weren't great in the second half, really, Monaco, they really didn't rise to the occasion that Nice had offered them. And I thought Nice was super in so many areas. I thought they tactically got it right. They switched it a little bit to sort of, they've been playing 2 up front in a sort of 3-5-2. It was more of a 3-4-3 in this one, where Belander and Cyprien on the wide areas, but they tucked in a little bit narrower when needed. And it was so congested in those central areas where we mentioned on Monday where Monaco are so excellent, Fabinho, Bakayoko and Bernardo Silva really play in those areas. And they just smothered them at times. And they were so good going in attacking areas as well. I thought Balotelli was good and had that little bit of fire in him that really motivated him. He scored an excellent second goal that was set up beautifully by a Belander who played really well. I thought, for me, closely following Cardinal in that man of the match role was probably Willan Cyprien. I thought he was excellent. I thought he every time he had the ball, he wanted to drive at someone. I thought he had Raji on toast too many times. I thought he was sublime at times in that more advanced role than we've probably seen him so far, apart from probably when he came on against Marseille. But they were really, really good last night. Whether that's sustainable is another question entirely, because we're not 100% certain on this Nice team at the moment. It's exciting to watch such a team, with such a team as Nice bringing a really, well, not a massive name manager, so I would say, but for Ligue 1 standards at least, a big name manager, bring in some big name players and really not wilt under that pressure and show against the best team in Ligue 1 by some distance so far, and to absolutely really pick them apart at times, I thought was really true thing of beauty. But I can't see them keeping it up. I can't see them staying in the top 2. Could they be top 3 though? They should be. They should be hoping for top 4. I think they're good enough now. I think they've shown enough, even in these early stages, that other than possibly Paris Saint-Germain, Lyon, and Monaco, I think they're the best of the rest. And I think it's difficult to argue that anyone else is at this moment in time.
All right, Adam. Nice, again, face quite the big trip to Krasnodar on Thursday, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Monaco. We've got, again, we talked about this in the recent past, how they do have a little bit of a short squad. Now you've got Bakayoko suspended, Mendy and Diarra out. Falcao was kept in the hospital last night for observation, but apparently has been released, and there's a potential that he'll be available on Saturday against Angers. But Thomas Lemar is also an injury doubt. There's been no word that I can find about that. Is this, a trap game on Saturday?
Possibly. I think that their squad, although perhaps not the deepest in Ligue 1 compared to some of the top 5 or 6 sides, has possibilities to stretch more than we give it credit for. Perhaps that performance in Lille, although we've said Lille's got quite a few faults already in this pod, but the performance was fantastic when they beat them 4-1 in Lille. So they've got the potential to stretch their squad a little bit further than perhaps we might give them credit for. But Angers have been fantastic, so it might end up being a bit of a trap for them, given that they'll be focusing on Champions League the week after, because they're getting out of the groups to be important for them, and Angers are in form, so it may end up being a difficult game. Although it's at home, not the best atmosphere at the Stade Louis II, so it may end up being a difficult game for them this weekend. But I think that if they start, they can't sustain that form is the only issue. Those players that can come in over a couple of games when they're resting players for Champions League or a couple of injuries. But if it really starts to build, then we'll start to see that this isn't really, that sort of squad depth isn't sustainable, and they may end up coming a cropper in later rounds in Ligue, and if they can't get those players fit, or if they do suffer like long-term injuries or suspensions. So that'll be difficult. But with Angers, I've been a big fan of them in the last few games. They've really looked like the Angers of old. They've kept the ball brilliantly well in midfield. Since Thomas Mangani's come back, they've looked like a different team. He's fantastic on the ball. They're so assured in possession in midfield when they're on form. And Santamaria's come in and has gone some way to facing Roman Saiz, who was brilliant, and apparently he was fantastic on his debut at Wolves at the weekend as well. It might have been this week. But yeah, he's done transitioned well to the Championship. It just shows what a good player he is. But to replace him, they really need to find someone with a similar skill set, and I think Santamaria's got that. So even with Pavlovic coming in and Traore out, they still look like they were at the beginning of last season. So I think this is a very close game, and Angers will fancy their chances going to Monaco with the Champions League distractions. So yeah, it could well be a trap, and it could be a bit of an upset.
All right, Nathan, I wanted to get your take on Angers here quickly before we end the show. Billy Kitkeofonfon also looks like he may have some knee ligament damage. There's been nothing conclusive, but there has been some reports mentioned around that. We've mentioned the youngster Nicolas Pepe in the recent past. Given Kitkeofonfon's inconsistent form this season, is he that big of a loss for Angers? And could this really give the opportunity for the likes of Pepe to really shine and develop into one of these young attacking players that we've seen Angers put out in the recent past? Thinking of Sofiane Buffon.
In terms of KO, he has been a little bit indifferent, but he did grab that really great goal at the midweek, and it was a really fantastic finish. He's still a really interesting player for Angers, and I don't know if they've quite got a similar kind of player. He plays in that sort of attacking midfield role, and I still really like him, although he's been indifferent this season. You can sometimes get a slow start, but he's not as big a loss as he probably would have been had it been something like last season, where he, especially towards the end, he really became more and more important for them. But it does give a chance to someone like Pepe. These kind of moments do, especially if you mentioned, if it's serious knee ligament damage.
It is. I'm actually just reading this now on the Keep. It's serious. It looks like he could be out for 6 months.
Yeah. So that will be a big miss. Yeah, to miss that kind of length of time, even if he has been indifferent so far this season, it's difficult to take that kind of thing. But it does give an opportunity to someone like Pepe to step up a little bit. I think he's been pretty good from what we've seen so far. But this, for young players in France in general, when this kind of thing happens, this is a massive opportunity for him now to really establish himself. If Kekeo, well, you've confirmed that Kekeo is going to be out for about 6 months. This gives him a real opportunity to prove his worth, settle a little bit, knowing that he's got a little bit of time on his side, and hopefully he can be another one of those players that we've seen at Angers be really successful. Whether he is, I'm not sure if he's quite of that quality. I don't think he's enormously far off, but I don't know if he's going to be quite the likes of a Buffon. But at the same time, young kid, go and prove me wrong. That's what I like to see. So yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity for him now. Yeah, but still, KO will be a bit of a miss for them. If it's going to be 6 months is a long time.
Yeah, I don't think we would have circled this match on the calendar prior to a couple weeks ago, but Angers really are finding form, and best wishes to Keke Fonfon, who has been really electric since Angers' promotion in his recovery. Nathan, your score prediction?
I'm going to be less optimistic and say Monaco win 3-0.
3-0, all right. Adam?
1-1.
1-1. I will go with 2-1 Monaco win. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I've been Eric Devin, joined by Nathan Staples and Adam White. You can follow us online at GFFN and visit us also at GFFN Match Zone for coverage of all of Ligue 1 action and Champions League action as well throughout the next few weeks. We will be back next week, but we'll take a break for the international week. So please join us next Thursday to wrap up the Champions League and Europa League fixtures, as well as provide a look forward at the following week of action in Ligue 1. Thank you, and have a pleasant rest of your evening.